Welcome to the show. I'm your host, Megan Nilsson, aka Crypto Megan. Things are heating up as election day is today, and I want to bring you guys on this channel as much value as possible. So I have a really big surprise in store for today. I'll be bringing up Master Analyst Trip from the Capital Mindset Trading Group, who's going to answer all of your pressing questions. We've taken questions from the group, from my YouTube channel, as well as on social media. So we're going to be going over all of the different charts to see just exactly what could happen after election day today. That's right. Everything could change from this day forward. And I'm super excited to go through these charts and this news with you. And without further ado, I'd like to pull up Trip. Trip, how's it going?
Hey there, Megan. I'm pretty good. How are you?
Good, good. We've been waiting for this moment a long time on this channel. We're really happy to have you here, and just a lot of stuff on Twitter, a lot of emotions running hot. People are wondering what's going to happen. How are you feeling right now?
Pretty excited. I really don't know what to expect here. I don't think Bitcoin or crypto in general has ever been in a position where we seem so heavily reliant on this election. Previous elections didn't really matter as much. They weren't so crypto focused. So this time definitely feels different. It's going to be a new experience for me to see what happens, but I'm excited otherwise just to see what happens.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I woke up to news. Actually, the first thing I check in the morning is the Capital Mindset group. So before we get started, the link is in the description. There's a 10% discount code if you say Crypto Megan. And I've been in this group for 3 years. I actually learned how to trade in this group. And Trip is the Capital Mindset lead analyst. I absolutely love your charts. I've been following them for a really long time. We've recently rebranded, right, to Capital Mindset. So there's so much value there. And I actually woke up to the news that Jim Cramer just came out and said the charts suggest that people are going to vote for Kamala, which I found really strange. And we know he's always, the opposite signal. Whatever he says is going to happen the opposite, because poly markets have been showing that Trump's going to win. I mean, for weeks on end. How do you reckon that news is? What do you make of that news?
Well, again, like we've kind of traded some of the inverse Kramer ideas. We don't really hold a lot of value to them just because it really is just one factor. But if we can compare it with the charts and find some kind of confluence and then see if there's an opposite to what he could be saying, then we'll trade that outcome for sure. But a lot of the time, I don't base a lot of my charting or my trading based off of just a couple hearsay things. But
Right.
they definitely do have an influence for sure. So it's interesting to pair them together.
So you think the time old saying, show me the charts and I'll tell you the news, stands true most of the time?
Yeah, even more so lately. Since I've been doing a lot of the time cycle analysis, there's been many events where people are claiming one thing or another, and I can say, well, this chart suggests that something completely different should happen. So it kind of gives us an edge in that sense. Most of the time, the timing is never right. So people are expecting something big to happen, and I can say, well, we still have maybe 1 or 2 weeks left until this event happens because of these time cycles.
That's so interesting. So you're able more or less to map out when these big moves could happen based on what the charts say. And again, they're not, it's not a crystal ball, but it's probabilities and statistics. Correct?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Um,
Um, it's like history repeating to a point. So if you have a cycle that is very consistent and you can repeat that cycle over and over, oftentimes I'll say to the group, like, this seems to be happening too fast. I think we have to wait a little longer. So that it gives us a huge edge.
Interesting. So I will ask you that question when we have the charts open. I know we have a few questions as to whether or not it's time for Bitcoin to break out of its all-time high. I also just saw that Joe Rogan came out and now is endorsing Trump directly because Elon was on his podcast, and things are getting crazy, right? It's really tension in the air, I would say.
Right. And Elon actually, I think, was hosting a virtual town hall just last night too. I haven't had a chance to check that out, but it seemed to be a very spur of the moment thing that was going on. So I'd be curious to watch that later on and see what is talked about during that.
Yeah, I think these polls are a lot closer than people may think for many different reasons. But, I think I saw a chart the other day that Hillary Clinton was favored to win by like so much more than Trump when Trump actually did win. So really anything could happen. And I think that's what we need to be prepared for.
Definitely. It seems like there's always a big change or something that happens right in the last few moments, right? When it's the most critical. Everyone will leaning one way or the other, and then boom, big surprise. So I wouldn't
Yeah.
doubt we see something like that happen again.
Right. So let's have a look at the charts now and see just exactly where we stand with Bitcoin at this moment. I know there's been a lot of talk on the lower time frames, and actually we just had a weekly close. So let's have a look at what's happening here. If you want to
Okay,
go ahead and pull that up.
sure. This is the Bitcoin 1 hour chart. In the group, we were looking for this pullback from up here. I think we actually had a triangle drawn here. And this eventually broke lower to the downside. So we've been tracking this movement to the downside here, and now it's forming this falling wedge. And recently it just broke out. The only thing I'm a little concerned about here is that we had a smaller amount of volume. Like the volume back here was definitely a lot bigger than this area where we were looking for the break. So maybe this should be adjusted to this level, and we're looking for a break with volume at that area instead. Since this previous low was lower than this low, we haven't quite confirmed a reversal yet as far as that idea goes. So there's a chance that we could come up and hit this resistance and then pull back one more time. And that's where we're going to be looking for a higher low. If we don't get the higher low here, then probably going to test the point of control. And this yellow line here is the 4-hour 200 MA. So another key support level that we would look to test if this doesn't break any higher from here.
Can you give us prices too for those support levels for those who can't really see the numbers there?
Sure. The point of control support is around 66.8 thousand. The resistance we're looking at is about 69. Really, the key level I think most people are looking for is to regain 70K. So this is also labeled on the chart. But back here, it wasn't really, we didn't visit 70K on the dot. Same here, we had a push higher, but didn't quite hit 70K. So now it might be more focused on the actual price levels on the chart that were interacted with more than 70K. So you might be able to get in before the 70K break if we see a volume confirmation move above this level at
Okay,
60.
so that's interesting. So it sounds like you're more or less based on the charts expecting a break of that 70K. What I have a question. What would be your line in the sand? I know a lot of people are looking at this and thinking, if Bitcoin goes below 65,000, then it's in the bearish control zone at that
Yeah.
point. And so what are your main points of interest going into this election that if it breaks lower than or higher than will confirm one way or another?
Well, I'd probably use the moving average here first. So the 4-hour 200 MA, recently we had a cross above. This is technically a golden cross. It's a lower time frame 200 MA crossing above higher time frame 200 MA. So this is the daily 200 down just below it. So the daily 200 right now is sitting at about 63.5 or so. So if we lose this point of control at 66.8 and the 4-hour 200 MA doesn't hold at around 66.2, then the line in the sand for me would be the 200 on the daily. If we break below that level, we might consolidate for a while. At the very least, like it's hard to say how deep we could go, but I'd have to see what the price action looks like to see what kind of structure we're forming. On the higher time frames, this is going to be getting close to another key support level. I've got an ascending triangle drawn. I have it on one of my other charts that I can show in a moment. So there's going to be some confluence between this 200 MA on the daily and that lower trend line that I'm looking for.
Right. Okay. So for you, even if it goes below 66,000 after the election is announced, it's still not considered bearish yet until it goes below your ultimate line in the sand, which is the 200 on the daily.
Yeah, that's right. That would be a strong move. But yeah, if we did break below that, I would look for divergences and other ideas because it's very common to see traps below that idea or below that moving average. So it's very common for the market to throw a fake out or a curveball. Most people will start selling. And in my opinion, right now, because of the ETFs and BlackRock buying up all the Bitcoin, it wouldn't be too unfathomable to think that people are going to sell right into their hands. They just want to scoop up as much Bitcoin as they can. I don't think they're too concerned about prices.
That's a hot take. I mean, yeah, that reminds me of the news that while people have been wondering what's going to happen in this election, what should I do? Should I buy? Should I sell? Yours truly, the CEO of BlackRock, Larry Fink, just bought almost 4.5 billion Bitcoin in the last 3 weeks. It doesn't look like he's too concerned about what happens in this election, right? I
Right.
mean, so
Same idea.
yeah, and Bernstein came out and said if Trump wins, it'll hit around 80 to 90,000 this year. but 200,000 next year regardless. So even if that doesn't happen, what that just goes to show is it seems like these analysts are expecting a bull run regardless of who comes into power, and that maybe we should potentially watch for a massive bear trap and capitalize on that.
Right. Yeah, we're going to be looking for the same signals that we usually do. So divergences are a main part of our trading strategy. If you see those on the higher time frames, you're looking for big reversals. If you see them on the lower term time frames, those could just be short-term bounces. So once we get to that level, if it happens, then we're going to look for major signals on the highest time frames we can find.
Right. And I know you do update the group on that, in the minute, like as it's happening. So we all stay up to date and we can all make trades based off of those indicators and those divergences. So let's move on then to the next chart.
So we'll just cover that really quickly. This is the log scale 1-day chart. So we'll add the 1-day 200 MA here. So if we move sideways for a bit, or if we start pulling back a bit, I'm looking for either the 200 MA on the daily to hold, and this is the lower trend line of the bigger pattern that we'd be focused on. If you were to look past this idea, then we're going to start looking at the weekly log scale charts.
And what is the bottom of the 1-day pattern here? I like to point out the price range for those that can't really see it, because I know that I appreciate it when I'm on YouTube. So more or less, if it came down to the bottom of this pattern, where would that put us?
Around 60K, I think, is going to be the nice ballpark number. That's a nice psychological support as well. This is the Bitcoin 1-month chart. So this is the it's showing the elections and the effect that Bitcoin has after the elections have been done. So really, regardless of who wins, Bitcoin usually continues on its path anyways. And that's one of my beliefs too, is that Bitcoin is basically on its own path, and it might deviate a little bit from that path, but ultimately we'll keep following this overall on the big picture.
Right.
So in November of 2012, Bitcoin really didn't care what happened. We still got the strong move upwards. That was almost a 10,000 or 11,000% move for Bitcoin.
Wow.
And then in 2016, same thing. We didn't really have any pullback. It just kind of kept going. And then the same thing in 2020, just a strong green candle and more movement to the upside. So even though the candle is red over here now currently, there's still, since it's just beginning of November, we have about 24 days or something to go before we confirm anything different here. So I think it's totally possible we can continue doing what has happened in the previous cycles.
Yeah, it seems resoundingly clear what could happen if history rhymes even. I know that on the smaller scales, a lot of people have been saying, Bitcoin has typically had volatility the day before and the days leading to and into the election. But it's kind of like the ETFs, right? Like we had a little bit of volatility around the announcement and then we were up and to the right. Just like happened with the gold ETF, and the rest is history. So, I think it's important to think about why these charts are the way they are because of what's happening in the macro economy and with the money that's flowing into the system, the rates being cut. I mean, it's just setting the stage regardless, right, for a bull run, in my opinion.
Right. Yeah, very much so. I think for the past year or so, since the inflation got out of control, technically now, if you were to compare to the DXY or the money flow charts, Bitcoin actually is still valued less than it was before inflation happened. So even though the prices are higher than they were a year ago, it's still worth less than it was at the time because inflation has just made such a difference in the value. Right. So
I
the
don't think I've
dollar
heard
value itself.
that news yet before. Yeah, like or had it comparatively positioned to inflation, but that's really interesting.
Yeah, it seems like it's going up, but it's actually catching up, in my opinion.
Wow. Yeah, it definitely puts things into perspective and why holding Bitcoin is a great idea in this type of environment. And like what you said, if we do end up seeing a bear trap or going down, people start panic selling, you're selling right into the hands of all the big smart money that's waiting to buy your Bitcoin.
Exactly. Yeah, I think that's it's a very common scenario that we've seen a few times. Michael Saylor will always pop up and say too, he just bought X amount of Bitcoin while everyone was scared. So we know this is happening, and he's very vocal about it.
Yeah, I mean, let's be prepared this time. For all those who are watching this channel right now, we're giving you a huge insight as to what's coming, not only based on previous cycles, but based on the charts as they are right now and what has happened every time. right? So we need to use those as some sort of indication. And I think that going into this election, if you're looking to change your strategy based on who's going to win, it's not going to be a winning strategy, right? You just follow what the charts say and continue with your strategy that you've had.
Definitely. The only thing that's strange is how much of the narrative is factored around crypto this time. But
Right.
it does seem like both parties are open to the idea of crypto positive American. So really, it doesn't really seem like either are really negative. It's just one might be more bullish than the other. Is really
Right.
the only
Yeah. I
comparison I
mean,
can see.
I think short term, maybe we'll see some turbulence, and even long term, it could have an effect if Kamala comes into office instead of Trump, as far as, how he regulates and how they would regulate and make things a little bit more difficult for crypto for sure. But it's still going to go where it's going. We're still in this macro cycle, and things are very bullish. So yeah, it's going to be interesting to see. But I think that definitely if Trump comes in, we're going to see some maybe nothing happen right on the get-go. I don't know, but definitely much more bullishness flood into the market right away. That's my prediction. I don't know. What about you, Trip?
Yeah, I definitely think there's going to be some kind of a reaction. And that goes back to the idea before where I said Bitcoin will deviate from the path for a short term whenever there's some unexpected news or something outside, like an outside factor that'll influence how the price moves. But it always seems to self-correct. So my date as it stands now is still around the middle of December. So even if Trump does win, we probably will get a nice move to the upside. But I don't think that's going to be the final move just because Bitcoin has to adhere to what it does on these time cycles.
Okay, interesting. So you're saying in December, what is going to happen in December? That it will break all-time highs, or that we'll see, like, what exactly are you plotting out with that?
Here, I'll pull up another chart for that just to show. Let me find it here. Okay, so this was an idea that I posted in the group, and this is all time cycle data. All I've really done with this chart is measure the distance from the high to the low, and this just goes back 3 cycles to the 2014 cycle. So the amount of time that it takes to go from the high to the low is 59 bars or 413 days for this cycle. So I figured out one day that you could just times it by 2 and go 2 cycles into the future. And that ended up being the end of that cycle when we saw that huge parabolic run. Now, mind you, it definitely started earlier down here, but the move that we were looking for where it broke the previous all-time high was on April 17th of 2017. So then if we copy that same idea and do it on the next cycle from the 2018 to the 2020 cycle, the same idea here. We're just measuring the amount of time from the high to the low, and that was a 53 bar cycle or 371 days. So if we look forward 2 cycles of that same amount of time, you can see we pretty much had the same effect. This is when it broke the all-time high on that second cycle. Excuse me. So then on this third cycle again, we had some ideas that were telling us that this would be a bullish divergence on this low. I have another chart to support this. So we were looking for a low here. And since it was about 53 bars here, 59 bars here, 54 bars for this downtrend seemed reasonable at the time. So we stuck with this idea, and we've just been doing the same thing as we did in the previous cycles. We're looking 2 cycles ahead with the same amount of time, so 54 bars and then 54 bars and 54 bars. That would put us at December 16th, 2024. So
And
this
that
has
would be
been,
to break the all-time high.
yeah, and technically we already have broken the all-time high, but with inflation, I think it made things a little different. So if you look at the chart, people would claim, oh, we've already broken the all-time high. It's already happened. But then we pulled back and now we've been
Right.
consolidating for about 6 months or so. And now it still seems like this idea is still in play and we're still aiming for this date based mostly on this chart.
And that's
If we
in mid-December.
Yeah. So here's the updated chart of where we are now. And as you can see, we're right on the cusp of that date and we're still just below resistance. So as I was saying, with the news from the election, you might get something short term, but I think Bitcoin will continue on its path that was meant to stay on, and it'll still take until the middle of December.
That's interesting because that does go a little bit contrary to everyone else's belief that we're going to see this thing shatter right through, especially if Trump comes in, and that we're just going to go on doing something different this cycle. And really, I mean, it seems to be history seems to rhyme, at least not repeat, but to rhyme. And this chart just goes to show how cyclical things really have been. So I consider breaking above all-time high, breaking above and holding for an extended period of time, not just wicking above,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, we're looking for
um,
a green stream to follow, not just a couple of green candles to pop up.
right,
Even if you look back here in the 2017 cycle, there was a moment where we poked above and then pulled back. So I think
right.
we could easily see something similar here where we pull back after an initial pump, and then the timing just has to stay true. So again, over here, this would be a moment where I said it's too soon. It's not allowed to
Mhm.
happen yet. So now
Interesting.
I'm sticking to that same idea, saying it might be too soon and everyone's going to get faked out.
Right. And those who get faked out will be selling to the smart money who's actually looking at charts like this, and expecting moves like this and just waiting for things to play out, which is an interesting thing. So technically, if they were to, be disciplined traders and have a look at these charts and follow what you say in the group, they could have a lot more success, right? Than just listening to social media and trading based on what they hear in the news. There's a lot of noise out there. And yeah.
Right. Yeah. There's lots of noise. People will say a million different things. I've been listening to people call for the breakout of this wedge or the structure that we've been moving in sideways for months now. They said it was going to happen in October. They said it was going to happen in September. They said it was going to happen in August. So every time that they say that, it's been invalidated, and it's
Right.
getting closer and closer to my date ultimately. So I can't really deny it at this point. It's like, well, look how close we are. If you think
Right.
about where we started and where I said we should be, I mean, we're about 96% accurate to the point. So it's really hard for me to start believing somebody else's ideas at this point.
Right. I mean, and you just look at the charts, and the charts are speaking the facts, right? Or at least the statistics, the probability of what's going to happen versus just sentiment. So, not trading on emotion. I think that's really interesting. And did the ETF throw the cycle off at all, or was that just more of the same? If you zoom out and people just attribute that to, they say, "Oh no, our cycle's different this time because we were so overheated before the halving." Do you see it that way in the charts, or is it more or less playing out the same way?
Well, again, that goes back to the DXY comparison of Bitcoin. We didn't make an all-time high on the DXY chart. So now I'm starting to wonder is the DXY chart more important when compared to Bitcoin, or is the dollar more important when compared to Bitcoin? So if
Mhm.
you compared the DXY chart, we didn't make that new all-time high, so the cycle would still be on point. Compared to
Interesting.
the dollar, though, yes, there was that bit of a push, and I think that was the ETF frenzy that made it look that way on the chart.
Mm.
So it's a kind of a mix of both, but I'm still kind of, on the fence of which one I want to lean into yet. But we're definitely narrowing it down. So I have a DXY compared to BTC chart, and I have the
Mm.
USD value BTC chart, and I'm watching them both just as closely at this point.
Interesting. Okay, so where we stand right now is that the breakout, according to these charts, shouldn't happen until mid-December, early December, and potentially a bear trap after the election. Because I know people love predictions here on YouTube. So just based on what we've been speaking about, that's kind of like what I'm gathering here. And as I don't know if you have any other election charts you want to show, or maybe we can go a little bit more macro and talk about when you think the cycle might top out.
Yeah, well, the election chart is there's not much more I can really do with it. I mean, I can go to the monthly chart and then I can zoom in, but really, it's just like you might as well zoom into the 1 hour chart altogether and try to trade within the range that we've already seen for the past little while.
Would you
And
try
I'm
to
just
trade this election, or would you sit on your hands? Is it just too much volatility and too much unpredictability?
I don't think I would open up any positions that were new at this point.
Mhm.
Anything that I'm holding, I'm just going to hold as it is. Nothing's really changed as far as that goes. And I would just be reaccumulating more if we did have a chance for another buy opportunity. But as far as
Absolutely.
like trying to trade the move itself, I don't think I would attempt such a thing.
Right. No, it seems to be like, if you're going to go long or short, you'll be stopped out for sure. It's just that kind of volatility that gets people in trouble. So I would completely agree with you. I'm planning on doubling down if we get a big, fear candle, and just going with what the charts say. Like, and my macro view as well. Leading into December, you think we're going to have a very bullish December. So if you have a look at what Plan B says, he says it's best to buy 6 months before the halving and sell 18 months after the halving. Those 18 months would put us right around October 2025. What do you see happening for this cycle? and where do you see it topping out?
Yeah, so I actually have a calculated date for that as well. So I don't know, is this the chart that's shown right now, the BTC 1 week with the
Yeah.
cycles?
Hmm.
Okay, the October 20th date is what I have here. This is a trend-based measurement. So to get this date, I use the trend-based Fibonacci tool. It's for measuring time. So I pulled the starting point would be down here at this low, and then you pull to this high of the previous cycle or the last top, and then down again to this bottom. And that would project time forward. And it actually lands exactly on October 20th, 2025. So that again would fall into the 18 months after the halving date. So it's really interesting to see that kind of confluence and also something I can actually measure on a chart.
Right. I love those time-based fib charts. I think they're just so telling as to what we can, I don't like to use the word expect, but what we can extrapolate from the past data. You post a lot of those charts in the group, and they've been so helpful in kind of like getting an overall sense of where we're at.
Yeah, definitely. We're not trying to nail the exact date. Basically, if you're in a bull run and you've been in since the bottom and you're looking for a time to take profit, you would be scaling out the closer and closer you get to that date. So it might not be like dump everything on this day because you nailed the
Right.
top. It's just like, are you up 4,000%, whatever many percent it is?
Yeah. Right.
Take your profits. So I think it takes a lot of responsibility off of you, and you just look at something that says, hey, this was the beginning and this is the end. I only have one objective to do, and that's to make sure I keep my profits.
Right. No, absolutely. I mean, scaling in, scaling out, you can never nail the top. I do want to get into, as we're going to end this stream now, the diminishing returns. That the chart you showed previously, it was like the percentage that Bitcoin has risen after every election. Maybe we can revisit that. So I just wanted to go back to this chart because I saw that, you said in the first cycle, it was almost 11,000%. As we go to the next cycle, which is 2016, it shows 2,700% more or less. And we're going a little bit less every cycle, most recently about 300%. What do you think it will be? I mean, are there any calculations that you come up with to say, hey, then these diminishing returns show that we should get X% this cycle?
Yeah, there's a couple ideas that I've looked at, and I understand the diminishing returns aspect of it. But at the same time, as Bitcoin is bought up in the market and less and less and less, like the supply and demand is going up. There's always less supply and there's always more demand. So it's kind of hard to gauge exactly what the highs could be as you start having less and less and less Bitcoin on the market. I don't think people are in a fear state of there's no Bitcoin left to buy. And I don't think we've hit that point yet, but that could blow this out of the water once it gets to that critical point. So I know people are seeing this flow of like less and less and less, but it also means there's less and less and less supply. So I think there could be a critical moment where we're like, oh no, like what do we do? There's no more Bitcoin to buy on the market.
That's an
So
interesting take. Yeah,
force the
actually, I
price
saw some
higher.
stats on that on X. It was like how many Bitcoin were bought up by the ETFs and how many were produced. And actually, there was one day where it was more than what was produced. So I think you have a really valid point in that we can't predict or we can't kind of like extrapolate that inflection point where we actually hit that demand, right?
Right. It's been a natural growth cycle of just buying what's been available, but now we're going over that point where there's excuse me, there's less available and people still want more and more of it. So I don't think that shock has really hit the market yet. We've talked about it, we've heard about it. Exchanges often mention that there's only this many Bitcoin left on the exchanges. Like Binance's volume has dropped dramatically since way back when it first came out, right?
Right.
So yeah, again, there's a couple of contributing factors that may change this whole idea. I mean, for people to estimate that Bitcoin's going to go into the millions, this is the kind of supply shock that I think we need to experience for something like that to happen.
Wow. Okay. So when do you see that? Is this going to be a larger than life bull run? Is this going to be way bigger than people expected? Or do you think that this takes a couple of cycles to pan out?
It might take a couple of cycles. I think we're going to have pullbacks along the way, and they're going to be cyclical just the same. But really, if you to draw this thing as a rising channel, so we'll just do that now. If we draw this like a channel here, if this breaks to the upside, you're going to see a parabolic move. So we could get to the point where this rising wedge is breaking up, and then you see ridiculous prices very quickly. So there's a technical way to look at this as well, besides just theory and guessing about what could happen. So I mean, this
Interesting.
strong uptrend, right? So that would be the only thing that I could see that would push it to those levels very quickly. Otherwise, yeah, it would take a couple more cycles to grow to that stage.
So then getting back to predictions, because people love them, what is your price prediction for this cycle based on all of this data?
Okay, so this is Bitcoin on the 1 week log scale chart. This is an indicator you can find on TradingView. It's free to use. It's called BTC Moon Math. So if you guys wanted to pull it up yourselves and take a look at this chart, you totally can. These green circles previously are where Bitcoin peaked above the blue and even outside of the rainbow back in the history. The blue zone that we're looking at here is the conservative. I'll even call it conservative at this point. We could probably hit the blue zone of this rainbow again, just like we have in the previous cycles, no problem. So the blue cycle of this rainbow at this point, and lining up with our October 20th, 2025 date, that would put Bitcoin near 316,000 on the very high end. Now, again, I'm not trying to call an exact number, but it's not too unfathomable to think that we hit this blue range again, since this has happened since, more than 10 years. It's been happening.
Wow. I mean, that is that's interesting because it's much higher than even most of the, YouTube influencers are predicting, and they're usually like way out of the ballpark, right? So but this is actually factual data that shows that it is possible, right? And not just a made up number on YouTube. And in order for that to be possible, we'd have to see some of that supply shock starting to come to fruition that you talked about, right?
Yeah, exactly. So there's definitely a chance that it could go much higher than people expect. But we may not revisit this level this time. It could be the first time we don't on one of these cycles. But out of the past 5, we've hit that. So
Right.
you'd be betting against those 5 chances or those 5 times.
Right. And, it's all about statistics and probabilities. And if the statistics are against what it shows in the charts, then it's not more likely to happen. I guess we could put it that way. One of the biggest questions I get, because there are some analysts out there saying, like, we may not even break the $73,000 range, and we might be done for this bull run and get a triple top and then have a really bearish few years. What do you make of that scenario, and if it's possible?
Well, there is another idea that I've been thinking about. Most of the time in trading, there's like a rule of 3. I don't think it's an official rule, but usually people will bet on something because they've seen it happen a couple times before. And they're like, oh, it happened here. It's got to happen again. So that third time might be the time where everyone gets fooled. So I don't doubt it, but this is, again, why we have stop losses. This is why we pay attention to the market and all the other signals that we get on the lower time frames and the higher time frames. So regardless of what I think could happen as a possibility, we're still going to trade the major signals that we can actually trade. And that's going to be our number one thing to focus on.
So you're talking about looking at indicators in the moment when we revisit those all-time highs. How do we look? And I guess a major deciding factor too, to invalidate some of the bearish things that we've seen on longer time frame charts, is to really blow it out of the water when we get back up to those $70,000 levels, right?
Right. Yeah. I have a couple of charts that show that. I'll see if I can find one here. Okay. So this was the 1 week chart on log scale for Bitcoin. This shows about 10 years of its data. So we found the bottom just by looking for these divergences. We had 3 bullish divergences on the bottom, and that was the reversal. And then you had 3 bullish divergences on the bottom, and that was the reversal. And then the same thing again just recently. I've highlighted these bearish divergences on the weekly chart. So here we see a number 2. When you see a number 2, this is called the divergence from any indicator tool that's showing all these different flags. So it's measuring, I think, up to 12 different indicators where it's detecting divergences on. So when you see a number 2, it means that it's found 2 indicators that are showing that divergence. So I back tested, and the last time we saw 2 during this same stage of the market cycle, like right near the 3rd phase, as according to my other time cycle charts, this 2 that was printed was completely ignored, and we kept going up. And back here, same idea. You had a 2 printed around the same idea after you broke the high. And that one was pretty much completely ignored too. We didn't see a pullback until the second one. But again, that was pretty short term considering, right? This might have been a decent move going from 4,500 down to 3,200. But
Right.
again, that was just a big buy opportunity and it kept going up. So it definitely is a chance we see a pullback, something similar to this, but I think it's still going to continue on its path.
Right. No, that's really interesting. So the fact that it's been ignored the past previous cycles right in the same time frame. Because I know a lot of people are fearful about that. What if we don't get enough momentum coming in and we do have that bearish divergence play out? But this is an interesting indicator as to how things could go. I wanted to ask you back to the cycle end. So it was predicted for around October 20th, I think you said, based on those time fibs. Would that be the end of Bitcoin cycle or the entire cycle? Because I know sometimes the altcoins run a little bit after Bitcoin. What would that be?
Yeah, so we tend to see a last push on the altcoins right when Bitcoin's pretty much topped out. So Bitcoin will start hitting starts to flatline essentially. You start getting these tops that are really close together and it's not really pushing any higher. That's when the altcoins seem to do the best because the money will flow from Bitcoin. Essentially, people are taking their profit on their Bitcoin trade and they're trying to get in the last little push from their altcoins. So this, again, could be more of a whales trading idea where they're controlling the market and they decide that, hey, I've already made X amount on my Bitcoin. Now I'm going to push up these altcoins with those profits just to squeeze out the last little bit of juice before it's time to finally roll over. So we could see something similar to that again. Yeah.
So if we were to extrapolate out and we start to break through the all-time high in December, do we have one big push and then a huge correction and another big push? Or are you expecting it more or less to just kind of like trend upward throughout the year?
I think it could be similar to the 2017, 2016 rally back here. So actually, I have another chart that I'm going to compare. It's actually a direct comparison to the 2016 rally. So if we look here, I'll try to find that chart. Here it is. Okay, so we made this comparison back in, I guess it was around October of 2023. So we had just made this initial break above that key resistance. And if you compare it to the 2016 cycle, you had a same ascending triangle structure that broke out. And once we got that push higher, we pulled back. And then here where we're looking for a same type of a move, it says might see this move next. I know it's hard to see. I'll try to bring this.
And that move is when?
Well, this is the one that already happened, right? So we were looking for this move after the October. So it was about the beginning of January 2024. And I'm just going to press the play button to see what happened there. Okay. So this is the move that followed afterwards. And then if you compare it to the 2016 cycle, it's basically the same thing. We had that break above, you pulled back, and then it continued higher. So the pullback that we'd be looking for could be something similar to one of these pullbacks. Right. And then after it breaks on the third cycle, I assume it would move similar to this, where you're going to have these flags and keep going, and then more flags and keep going. Right. So this went up for a while. So you had decent pullbacks and they were just buying opportunities.
Interesting.
So yeah, definitely we could see something similar here coming.
All right. Well, this is a really cool, I mean, it's cool to see that it played out in that way. So eerily similar, right? I mean, these charts, they really do allow you to extrapolate that data and show you what you could expect based on previous cycles. That's very, very interesting. Very cool. So getting back to your price prediction before we head into the next charts, which are some of the good ones that you posted in the group recently, the good setups for altcoins. So you think Bitcoin could hit anywhere from 100K to 300,000 based on that chart?
Yeah, I think it's a possibility. Yeah, I think it would surprise a lot of people, and this would be the most amount of FOMO that we've seen in the market yet. Also, because if the USA becomes more crypto friendly, basically, the United States feels like they've been kicked out of crypto because taxes have been raised on it. The access to the exchanges has been extremely limited. I mean, there's almost nowhere to trade except for Coinbase or maybe some other smaller exchanges that don't require KYC. But if you can find those, they're hard to find. So once that changes, I think the attitude towards crypto is going to be different. Like now people can access Robinhood to buy crypto. You can buy it on Cash App. You can buy it on Venmo. I think PayPal is about ready to, or already is, allowing you to buy crypto on their platform too. So
Right.
just the access to buy crypto has been easier than it has in the previous cycles. So
And not to
people are
mention, like, all
warming
the
up to.
charts show that retail isn't even here right now. They don't even care right now. I mean, like,
Right.
Bitcoin searches at our all-time low. I know that a lot of YouTubers say that their stats don't reflect anywhere near being in a bull run. So it's really interesting to see that they're kind of like, maybe they'll start to wake up once we break all-time highs and head more toward 100K. I don't know. But
Yeah.
yeah, it's interesting that we're at this point and we still don't have that retail mania yet.
Exactly. And I think the 100K level is going to be such a big deal. People are going to be doubting that it could hit that level, and it might take a while before that FOMO actually kicks in. I mean, if
Right.
somebody wakes up one day and says, wow, Bitcoin's actually at 100K, that could be the moment where you see major FOMO kicking in. It might,
Oh,
like,
yeah.
I don't think they see all-time highs on the charts necessarily, right? Like they're not really looking at the charts as much as we are. So they might have
Right,
even
right.
forgot what Bitcoin got to on the last cycle, and it just
Yeah.
wouldn't be a factor in their mind. But
100K would be that
100K number,
psychological. Yeah.
yeah, that's a big news event. It would be all over TV, and then they'd be like, "Wow, okay, this thing is real." So
Very cool. Then they start thinking it's hitting the millions, and then they start FOMO buying, and then we're back in action, right?
definitely. Well, we're going to see commercials, right? So BlackRock has already had a couple of TV commercials. They've done a lot of promoting for Bitcoin in general. So once that becomes more mainstream, it'll be as common as like, here, do you want to buy a cell phone? Oh, what's a cell phone? Who's going to use this, right? So we're going to see the same kind of adoption rate coming. I don't think Bitcoin quite has hit that adoption curve to go parabolic quite
Right.
yet,
No.
but it's going to be about as common as using a cell phone, in my opinion.
So cool. So cool that we've made it all the way here after all these years. It's super exciting to see these charts play out in real time. I know I've been loving every single update that you make in the group. And speaking of that, we did promise that we were going to give some freebie setups to people to just get an idea of what happens in the group. So let's have a look.
Right. Yeah. Here's a setup I just posted a little while ago. We've already got this bullish bounce, and it's been pretty strong for ACH, ACH USDT on the 1 hour chart. So
Mhm.
this idea here is we're looking for a bear trap confirmation. A bear trap is essentially when the price drops below a major support. So over here we had a bounce, you had another bounce, you had another bounce, and this time it broke through. So a bear trap to be confirmed means that you break back above that level, and then maybe you get a retest to confirm, and that turns this whole move into a trap. So the buy the breakout idea here is you're buying the break above this resistance to confirm that trap. And we're really just trading the local range here. I
Mhm.
think this is a pretty decent move just to the top of the range. We'll pull a price range tool just to see. All right, so even on a 1 hour chart, that's a 20% move just to the top of the range for this setup.
Not bad. Not bad at all. And even I know there's a leverage trading groups as well within this group for people who want to learn how to trade with leverage or who understand that. So that could be even a bigger move for them. That's huge.
Yeah, with leverage, right? That's the game changer in our group. If you want to take a little bit more out of the market, essentially it also means you don't need to trade as often. You just focus on the really good trades when they happen, and you can milk a little bit more out of that trade than an average trader would be able to. So
Right.
you
So
take,
picking up bags of cash instead of pennies, right?
yeah, definitely. You just make your home run hits count instead of just bunting, right?
Yeah. Love it. Love it.
So the
All right. So ACH.
ACH, yep,
Mhm.
on the 4 hour chart. The next one we're looking at is ENA. So this is a 4 hour chart as well. So we're looking for the breakout of this falling wedge here. Interesting thing that's going on with ENA, and a lot of coins are doing this too, is that we've had this bottom put in. We put in a high that was higher than the previous high, and then this low that came in was higher than this previous low, and then it made another high that was higher than this previous high. So this is in an uptrend at the moment. So
Right.
this low, if this confirms a higher low than this low, then we're probably expecting another push to the upside. So this chart has been massively pushed to the downside already. So it's
Right.
got some decent room to go upwards from here. And these are very clear reversal ideas that we're looking at. So the key resistance that we're looking at, if this does break out, short term or midterm, you could say we're looking at about 65 cents. So from 34 cents up to 65 cents, that's almost 100%, maybe
Yeah.
80% or so. We'll measure that. Yeah, so you're getting about an 89% move out of this, 87%. So this
Huge.
is the 4-hour chart. You're going to get a little more action than the 1-hour chart posted previously for ACH. So
Right.
definitely I would pay attention to ENA to see if this breaks that wedge. The
Nice.
uptrend looks solid here. I think it's a great setup.
Yeah, very bullish looking chart. And I know that as Bitcoin turns around and if we start to get some momentum picking back up, there's going to be so many different charts. And you are, an expert at picking out the best setups. I've definitely had so many winning trades myself because of these setups. I know
Okay.
there have been a lot of winners recently, and it's been really fun to see. I know your Dogecoin setup not too long ago. I mean, that was a huge rounded bottom, and Dogecoin just ripped from that. Recently. Did you see that?
Yeah, Doge has been doing pretty good. It seems to be following Bitcoin and even going a little faster than Bitcoin.
Yeah.
I think just because it's the king of the meme coins, it's really setting the tone for what the meme coins could do next. So if Doge is moving first, you'd expect the other memes to follow. So watching watching Doge do what it's been doing so far is a good sign for all the meme coins in general.
Right. Absolutely. No, I know people love those meme trading. And I saw that as an indicator that, we've still got a lot of gas left in the tank for memes this cycle. So,
Definitely, yeah.
all right.
I have one
Um,
more to show. This is a
okay.
smaller cap.
Do it.
This is a smaller cap AI coin. So this is found on, I think you can trade it on Mexi and a few others, maybe KuCoin as well. We've been waiting for the support entry. So we saw this initial move to the upside. We use these fibs to measure where we're going to take profit here. And this pullback down to support is going to be our next opportunity to buy. So if it does start to range on this bottom here, I would be scaling in over time. I mean, if you look over to the left, it wasn't a clear bounce straight out after it hit this support. So you
Right.
had a few opportunities to buy in. So if you're watching LAI, you have a couple chances here if it starts moving sideways to accumulate. Again, this has got a really good pattern, a really good support range, and the upside movement, to our key resistance level. That's about a 232% move. So very decent profits. This is an 8-hour chart, so it's going to take a little longer to play out. But yeah,
Mhm.
definitely for people who want to take their time and accumulate on the support.
Yeah, that's what I'm all about. Buying those support entries, just letting them play out, do their thing, midterm holds kind of thing. I think those are, for somebody who has the limited amount of time too, this is an excellent strategy. So this is a great chart. Buy at those support levels. Um, Really exciting stuff. I mean, there's so many setups like this in the group, and also the news that moves the markets and how we can make sense of it all. This has been such a life changer for me. I learned how to trade in this group. And so I really appreciate you coming on here and just giving us these tips. And as we close this stream, any other tips for people trying to learn how to trade or a little bit frustrated with the markets lately? Any words of wisdom?
Definitely. Like if you're still learning or just starting to learn how to trade, focus on a few ideas at first and don't overwhelm yourself. You want to nail down a strategy, but you don't want to do too much by adding all these different indicators and all the things you might have seen on YouTube or whatever. Just focus on the RSI. That's probably your most important indicator to focus on. And then if you mastered what the RSI does, then you can move on to divergences. Those are probably the strongest tools that I learned early in the beginning that I still use today, and I'm still perfecting that. So it's something that's going to take a while to understand fully, but it's going to be the most rewarding tool that you have in your toolkit.
Wow. A lot of gems in this episode. I really enjoyed going over those macro charts with you as well, just so we get an idea of where we're at. It's so easy to just get very focused on the short term movements and news. But, the charts say that we could expect some massive bullishness coming into the markets. And I'm playing it that way. I'm really excited for this election to happen and for us to go forward and see what happens in these coming months.
Yeah, me too. I think there's a lot of potential here in the market. So if you haven't joined the group yet, we teach everybody from different levels, from beginners to novice to advanced. We've had people come into the group that have been traders their whole lives, and they discover something new in our group that they've never seen before. So
So
even
cool.
if you think you know what's going on, you might learn something new. So definitely
Absolutely.
we're
It
open
really
and accepting.
just a successful trader too pays for the group and so much more. And there's so much value in there, even apart from trading. There's so many different things to look into. So yeah, there's a link in the description. Sign up. I know we're starting to get in that point in the market where if things turn around, the trading is going to be it's going to get even easier. We're going to have less chop, and it's a pivotal time in the market. So yeah, link is in the description. 10% off code with Crypto Megan. And Trip, thank you so much for being here.
No worries. Thank you very much for having me. It's been great.
All right, until next time.